Terraria is a pretty complicated game. It has thousands of items, hundreds of enemies, and a lot of weird and unintuitive mechanics. And because of that, it's easy to make the game more difficult by making some tiny, easily fixed mistakes. These are the 10 biggest mistakes I see new players make. Let's start with one that so many people do immediately. It's the start of the game and you want to go mining, so you dig your own cave. It's very common to see players take their pickaxe and just start digging straight down at the start of the game, or in a staircase pattern. And you will get underground eventually, but the thing is, this is very slow, and you're wasting a lot of time to get nothing in exchange. The area directly underneath spawn is made of solid blocks. There's nothing to find there. It's much better to walk across the surface for a little bit until you find a cave. You can hit every tree you pass for free items and loot all the random chests you come across. These give you potions, torches, and even weapons to make mining easier. These caves, they look like hills, are guaranteed to go down to the cavern layer and spawn tons of pots and surface chests on the way down. Sometimes there might be sand blocking the way, but the cave will continue after the sand ends. They usually end in areas that have big connected caves, so you can just keep wandering around them. The way that life crystals and chests generate make them more common in larger caves. They pick a spot in the world and look underneath it, so you want to have big open spaces that you're mining in. To test this, I made a couple worlds and gave myself 10 minutes to get whatever items I could, and across the board I would end up with way more stuff when I'd walk around looking for a cave. It's faster, gets you more items, and is more fun. This is boring. Why would you dig through all of this empty space with a slow pickaxe when you could walk to a natural cave lined with treasure to get to the same area? Now, it's not completely black and white. Sometimes there won't be caves near your spawn, or you might prefer the safety of being completely isolated from spawned enemies. That's valid, but I would strongly suggest looking around for caves before you start digging down. Because you're in an open space, you will be subject to some more danger, but it should be manageable. You might also see caves in the Corruption or Crimson and get scared of them, but these are actually incredible day one. There's a good chance that their tunnels will overlap with demon orb spawns, letting you break one for a free gun without any bombs. And even if you know you want to build a elevator later, it's better to go mining in a cave to get a better pickaxe and supplies first, then come back and start digging around spawn. This is also something that's going to be more pronounced on large and medium worlds compared to small worlds. If there's less distance to dig underground and the cave lengths are shorter, it's not as beneficial to find them. Also, depending on your initial pickaxe reforge, this could be a lot worse or not quite as painful. If you do find yourself without any caves, just try to get straight down as soon as possible and start finding caves, then look for connections between them. Pay special attention to any giant caves like mushroom biomes. These are extremely likely to have treasure in them. You always want to let World Gen do the heavy lifting for you, especially when your mining speed is slow at the start of the game. You might be tempted to rush and throw together some very bare-bones houses for NPCs early in the game, but building bad houses is such an easy way to set yourself up for disaster later. Terraria is very, very loose with what a valid house can be, and this is a very popular house that you'll see frequently used in speedruns. NPC hotels or prisons, where you cram a bunch of them together in one spot, are pretty common too. Even if you make a normal box house, you might leave it unprotected and vulnerable during blood moons and invasions. You want your houses to do 3 things: keep enemies out, keep your NPCs happy, and be convenient. A house like this doesn't keep enemies out, and while you'll save some initial time building the house, you're going to lose a lot of time waiting for your NPCs to respawn because they died. Houses like this are pretty convenient, but your NPCs are going to take a big hit to their happiness, making everything more expensive. You shouldn't keep more than 3 NPCs in a small area, and ideally you'd split your NPCs into small bases throughout the world to buy pylons. If the NPC is happy and a second NPC is nearby, they'll sell a pylon and you can teleport from pylon to pylon. It's a very convenient way to get around the world. If you want to make an NPC hotel like this, spread the houses out a bit. Instead of making a giant box like this, make smaller boxes of 3 spaced apart, or in different biomes to buy a pylon. If you're dead set on making a giant hotel, then at least make a separate house for the NPCs you actually care about and will be spending money at, like the Goblin. For the quick speedrunner houses, make the walls out of blocks and not platforms. And regardless of your house type, protect it from enemies and invasions. Enemies that can open doors always open doors in the direction they're moving, and if there's a single piece of furniture in front of the door on the inward side, they can't open it. You can put down a chair, torch, rope, or a solid block. Goblin thieves break down doors, so you need to use a solid block or build a trench around the house to protect against them. Trenches or floating houses are a good idea in general. Once ghost-type enemies start showing up in hard mode, they'll get caught in the trench, and you can flood trenches with lava to kill enemies for you. This next one is mostly relevant for hardcore playthroughs where you die permanently. Once you hit 200 max HP, goblins and the Eye of Cthulhu can randomly attack if you meet a few other criteria. So, a popular tactic is to keep yourself at 180 HP until you have enough life crystals to get to 300 or 400 max HP, then use them all at once. That way, when you do get invaded, you'll be less likely to die. It sounds really appealing, but this is a mistake, for two reasons. Firstly, you know when you're able to be invaded. You need to have 200 max HP and you need to have broken a Shadow Orb or Crimson Heart. You could keep yourself below 200 HP to avoid it, or you could just avoid breaking the orb. Having a guaranteed musket or undertaker is very appealing though, so let's say you do want to break the orb. Okay, then you use a life crystal to get to 200 HP and now goblins can invade. As long as you did a tiny amount of preparation, you should be perfectly fine to fight the goblins safely. This basic trench makes every goblin harmless except the casters. Most of the times that you die to goblins, it's because they caught you unaware, but you should always expect them to show up the morning after you hit 200 HP and you've broken a Shadow Orb, so you should make sure that you have a weapon to fight them with and that your house is safe from being broken into before doing that. It takes like 60 seconds to make this. And similarly, while the Eye of Cthulhu can randomly spawn once you meet these criteria, you can simply remove some armor pieces just before nightfall to no longer have 10 defense, or remain underground the entire night to prevent the spawn. But those are just alternative ways to avoid spawning them. Why is it bad to remain below 200 HP? You'll die? You are much more likely to be killed by some random enemy or traps that you weren't expecting than the invasion that you know is gonna happen. The most dangerous part of a hardcore playthrough is the beginning, when you have low HP and you'll die very quickly. You want to get out of that part of the game as soon as possible. Also, the sooner you do a goblin invasion, the sooner you get the Goblin Tinkerer, which enables reforging and combining accessories, probably the biggest power spike in the game. Even if you're not in hardcore, it's better to get to 200 HP immediately just so you can get the goblin sooner. You are only making the game more difficult by delaying that, and if you desperately need a weapon, you can buy a few hundred grenades from the Demolitionist. Terraria doesn't explain a lot of its miscellaneous features and toggleable options very well, but they can massively impact the game. And if you don't know about them, you are seriously missing out. The most impactful and most easily missed option is this one here, auto fire. If you have this setting on, every weapon in the game will be used continuously if you hold down the attack button. Without it, you need to click for every use unless the weapon already has auto fire. This has an enormous impact on your quality of life and actual gameplay performance. You won't strain your finger clicking constantly, and you will genuinely deal more damage because clicking for every attack is going to be slower than attacking automatically. Trust me, I've beaten the game with a flare gun twice, once with autofire and once without, and it is so much nicer with autofire. There are two other systems that the game has that aren't immediately obvious: Smart Cursor and Smart Tool. Smart Cursor automatically selects nearby items or blocks for you to interact with so you don't have to move your cursor on top of them. It makes mining feel way more natural and helps you do all sorts of things: open chests, cut down trees, put down torches, or even place platforms. Even if you don't have any torches, walking down the caves from earlier and spamming right click with Smart Cursor will cause you to open any chests you come across. Smart Cursor will often cause platforms to be converted into stairs if your cursor is positioned diagonally to where you're placing blocks, but you can use planter boxes purchased from the Dryad to make a horizontal platform with Smart Cursor without making stairs. You can even use Smart Cursor to place blocks. If you toggle Smart Block Placement, here, Smart Cursor will select the tile closest to your cursor when placing blocks. You can turn Smart Cursor on and off by pressing the left control button. Smart Tool, meanwhile, causes you to pull out the item you need to interact with the block that your cursor is on by holding down the Shift button. If your cursor is on a block or destroyable background object, you pull out your pickaxe. You take out your axe for trees and hammer for shadow orbs and demon altars. If you have multiple tools that can do that, you'll pull out the first one in your inventory, starting with the top left as number 1 and moving to the right. Be careful trying to destroy demon altars because of that. If you have a molten hamax earlier in your inventory than your pwn hammer, you'll pull that out instead and take damage trying to destroy the altar. If your cursor is over an open space close to you, you'll pull out a torch. If you're underwater or your cursor is positioned far away from you, you'll pull out a glow stick or a flare gun instead. You can press shift to very quickly pull out a light source if you ever find yourself in the dark. Mastering Smart Cursor and Smart Tool will make playing the game feel so much smoother and more natural. Terraria has 2 mining tools once you reach hard mode, drills and pickaxes. The difference between them is that pickaxes are slightly slower to begin with, but can have their mining speed increased dramatically, while drills suck. They're not supposed to suck, and if you just look at their speeds on the wiki, they might look good, but every drill in the game is bugged to be 1 tick slower than it should be, making them much worse than they first appear. That means that it takes almost no effort to make a pickaxe just as good as a drill, and they can get much faster than drills if you use a couple items to improve your mining speed. There are very few situations where it's worth making a drill. You basically need to have literally no mining speed bonuses or not reforge your pickaxe, and even then, it has a range penalty compared to a pickaxe. If you're using a drill, you are making your mining trips take a lot longer than they need to. Terraria has a lot of buff potions that you can drink to provide a temporary bonus, and it's surprisingly common to just ignore them. You might think that they are kind of confusing to craft, or you find them in a chest and just think they look like a bad effect. You might throw herbs in the trash instead of storing them. If you do any of that, you are missing out on some pretty powerful effects. In particular, I've seen a lot of players disregard builder, mining, and featherfall potions as useless and even throw them away when they find them in chests. That is a mistake. Builder potions make you place blocks and walls 25% faster for 45 minutes. 45 minutes! Do you need to place platforms or blocks for an arena? Are you building a house and need to place some walls down? Are you trying to wall off enemies when you're exploring? Are you doing any of that in the next 45 minutes? Then drink a builder potion. It just makes you do all of that faster. Similarly, mining potions buff your mining speed by 25%, which is massive. It is tied for the single largest bonus to mining speed you can get from any one source, and it lasts for 10 minutes. I can promise you that once you start using some mining speed bonuses like mining potions, you will understand how nice they can be. Featherfall potions cause your character to fall more slowly, which negates fall damage. You can hold down to fall at a normal speed, which will still cancel fall damage, and hold up to fall even slower. They can feel very clunky and might seem bad at a glance, but genuinely, they are the most overpowered potion in the game, and it is not even close. A skilled player can utilize items that provide a temporary speed boost, like a grappling hook or double jump, to send themselves flying. You can use them with a minecart that has a hammered end to literally fly across the entire world. You find a featherfall potion in a chest, and that is a direct flight to either ocean. And they last 10 minutes and take extremely simple ingredients. Don't sleep on featherfall potions, they are phenomenally powerful. In a similar vein, Terraria does have a lot of potions, and it can be kind of confusing trying to craft them. If you can just remember these 3 buffs, you will drastically improve your ability to fight bosses: Iron Skin, Regeneration, and Well Fed. Both of these potions take Daybloom, which you find everywhere on the surface. Don't throw it away, and don't throw the seeds away either. Keep them in a chest and throw the seeds on the ground near your base. Put down an empty bottle on a workbench to be able to craft potions, and fill more bottles with water. Keep them, along with some iron ore and mushrooms, in a chest, and you've unlocked crafting the 2 most important potions in the game. Iron ore is nearly impossible to run out of, and Daybloom is super common, but if you run out of mushrooms, you can throw purification powder purchased from the Dryad at corrupted mushrooms to purify them. Lastly, food provides a ton of miscellaneous buffs, including damage, defense, HP regeneration, movement speed, and mining speed. You should aim to get a medium food buff. The simplest method is just to buy pumpkin seeds from the Dryad, plant them on grass, and cook them into pumpkin pies at a furnace. Eat them before you go mining, before boss fights, or honestly, just constantly. You'll get dozens of them easily. You can press the B key to automatically use any buff items you have in your inventory instead of needing to manually consume them. Terraria has a lot of items in it, and a lot of them are what I would consider to be noob traps. That is, items that look, and in some cases are good, but take so much time or effort to obtain that players get baited into spending hours grinding for them. The cell phone and Rod of Discord in particular. I won't mince words, the cell phone is a trap and is not a useful item. It only allows you to save inventory space on items that you don't need to keep in your inventory to benefit from. Any cell phone piece in a void bag will be treated as if it was in your inventory. There's no reason to spend the time to consolidate them into one item, and there's no reason to get all this information because most of this information just isn't useful. I can see my kill count in the bestiary, I don't care what my horizontal speed or position is, and we have a tool for seeing what the moon phase is. It's called looking at the moon. There are 7 enemies nearby, yeah. I can tell, they're on screen. It can be upgraded into the shell phone, which is a tiny amount of inventory consolidation. I find it is a monumental amount of effort to save one single inventory slot, because I don't think the demon conch is useful enough to keep in your inventory anyway. If you're trying to get one, I would seriously reconsider whether it's actually going to help you. The Rod of Discord is a good item, but it is also extremely rare and is something of a crutch. That is, it's very easy for a player to become completely reliant on the Rod of Discord when dodging bosses and not really learn how to avoid them normally, which then locks them into farming for it every single playthrough. And it's a 1 in 400 drop from an uncommon enemy. I have heard horror stories of people sitting in farms for a dozen hours without getting one. Because of that, a lot of new players fall into this trap of seeing an objectively good, but very rare item, spending way more time obtaining it than it would have saved them, and in some cases convincing themselves they need to do that every time they play. I think it's a trap item, and you should avoid farming for it in most playthroughs. If you happen to get one, great, but don't bend over backwards to make sure you get one. As a couple other common time-wasting traps I see players fall into, growing your own chlorophyte is never worthwhile. You should always just go mine it. There's plenty in the jungle, and it takes ages to grow yourself. Fishing for fledgling wings is never worth it, and fishing for a sandstorm in a bottle is usually a mistake too. Keeping up with that idea, let's say there is some item that you want. Hard mode souls, dungeon items, pixie dust, or maybe you do really want that Rod of Discord. So, you just hang around the appropriate areas and kill enemies. Bad idea, you're gonna be there for a long time. It takes very little effort to be more efficient here. You don't need to make giant farms that disable all possible enemy spawns. For souls, you can simply hang around the underworld just below where the hard mode biomes spawn, or look for mushroom biomes near them. These are both naturally big, open areas where large numbers of enemies can be killed relatively quickly. The problem is that if you're hanging around normal caves, a lot of enemies will just spawn off screen and get stuck in the caves, which will lower your spawn rates and just make things take a lot longer. For the dungeon, the sad truth is that 1.4.4 made it so that there is no reason whatsoever to ever go to the post-Plantera dungeon outside of biome chests. Seriously, you should never step foot in there. You can make an artificial dungeon by throwing some walls into the shimmer and placing 250 bricks down, which lets you control exactly where and what enemies will spawn, and you don't even need a dedicated farming space because they can only spawn where you want them to. For pixie dust, go into the sky a little bit, below where harpies start spawning, and build a spawning platform up there. You can use pearlstone and use hoiks to make it a bit more efficient. Similarly, this works fantastically for getting light and dark shards from mummies. Simply lay down some sand just off screen and throw some vile powder on top of it to corrupt it. Like 80% of Terraria's enemies only care about the top block that they're spawning on, not the actual biome, so you don't need to be in a desert, you just need a thin strip of the appropriate type of sand. And if you are farming the Rod of Discord, number 1, don't. Number 2, you want to make a dedicated farming space. It could take hours to get one, and you want to be as efficient as possible in that time frame. In general, anytime you're farming, make sure you don't have NPCs nearby and you have a water candle and battle potion to improve your spawn rates. The moment you hit hard mode, a giant V spawns in your world, half of it corrupting every block it touches, the other half hollowing them. From now on, both of these biomes will infect any nearby biomes, threatening to take over the entire world. Is what a lot of players think, but in reality, biome spread is such a non-issue. It is not worth taking the time to quarantine huge chunks of the world or stress about biomes becoming corrupted. It is true that the corruption and crimson will infect nearby biomes, and it can really suck having your bases or pylons get corrupted. To avoid that, you should protect them, which usually entails just throwing a few sticks of dynamite to make a hole between them and the corruption. Outside of that, you really don't have to care about the corruption. You can buy some hollowed seeds or place pearlstone between the corruption and anywhere you care about to have the hollow act as a buffer as well. Or you can just buy a Contaminator after killing a mech boss and purify anything that got corrupted using biome site potions to make sure you didn't miss anything. You really do not have to do much to make it a non-issue, and you absolutely do not need to build these giant quarantine zones around the world. Before hard mode, take note of if there are any evil biomes near anything you care about, and just throw down some dynamite to separate them if there are. Once hard mode starts, take note of where the corruption is, and, if you need to, put down a couple hollowed seeds. If it's really worrying you, get a Contaminator as soon as possible. It used to be a lot more threatening back when altars would randomly spread corruption throughout the world. You wouldn't know where the corruption was coming from, but you do now, and you really do not need to worry about it. It is completely reversible with minimal effort. And last but not least, you're in the jungle early in the game and a man-eater spawns. What is the worst thing you could do to it? Take the time to kill it. I am specifically talking about when you're trying to do some other task and enemies are bothering you, like when you're mining or trying to cross a dangerous biome. This has to do with how enemy spawning works. By taking the time to kill enemies, you are ensuring that even more will spawn. Let's take the man-eater example. You sit there and try to kill it, and by the time it dies, 3 more have spawned, and 4 hornets, and now you're stuck. You need to kill them to get away, but then even more enemies will spawn. Your exploration speed grinds to a halt, and now everything takes ages. Or, you are on the surface trying to get across a corruption. There are 1 or 2 eaters. If you stop to fight them, then 4 more will spawn, and maybe even a devourer. Then you're really in trouble. In both situations, if you kept moving, then you would have stayed in a safer position. In Terraria, every tick there's a chance for an enemy to spawn, and this happens 60 times per second. The more enemies that are spawned in at once, the less likely it is for more enemies to spawn until you reach a cap and no enemies can spawn. So, if you have a couple enemies spawned in already, it's less likely that another enemy will spawn in the direction you're going in. But if you stay in the area for a while, then enough rolls will happen to offset the decreased spawn rates, and you're going to end up with more enemies and end up stuck fighting them constantly. Of course, if you have a good weapon and kill the enemy quickly, this is mostly inconsequential. The mistake is when you don't have a good weapon, and you sit there for 10, 15, 30 seconds killing the enemy. It's better to just ignore them or wall them off and walk away. Don't stay in any one area for too long, because then enemies will build up there and you'll be forced to deal with them. But if you do end up with a lot of enemies spawned in at once, it's better to trap the enemies like this. There are times where it's a good idea to kill enemies. Sometimes they're blocking the way you want to go and you can't avoid them, or they're protecting something you want to loot, or you want the items that they drop. Those are perfectly fine times to kill them, but there are a lot of situations where spending the time to kill enemies will be detrimental. Particularly when you have a weak weapon that takes a while to kill them, you should consider running past them or walling them off instead. Remember, this video is not the end-all be-all of Terraria strategies. There are times when doing some of these can be good ideas, but it's very common for players to do them when it isn't a good idea. Speedrunners build houses like this because they're never at home and never have to worry about their NPCs dying. The game is over very quickly. But if you're not a speedrunner, like if you're, playing multiplayer with me, this is not a good house to build. There are times where you want to kill enemies, but also a lot of times where it will make the game much harder. Keep these 10 things in mind while you're playing. They will help you get a lot better at the game. Slug Cat.